In this video, I'm going to give you a create PT task for AP Computer Science Principles. And it's going to be a simple project that you can apply a lot of the different data sets to this. So you don't have to do this specific type of project, but some of the concepts and techniques that I use that we've learned through the code.org curriculum, I'm going to apply here. And I'm going to check all the boxes of things that you need for the create task. So we're going to need to use lists, so we're going to do that in the project. We're going to need functions and parameters, so I'm going to have a function and parameter. We're going to have to do sequence selection and iteration, so we're automatically going to get sequencing when we start to write our code. Selection, we're going to have an if statement, and iteration, we're going to use a loop here. All right, so in my project here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a project that will filter target locations first by state. It'll give the address in the city and the output area here. And then with the option after for the checkbox to come on for to filter it by the zip code. All right. Okay, so let's get started. So you can set up this on your own, the screen here. So all I have is a simple text input 1, text area 1, and on screen 2, I have text input 2 for the zip code and text area 2 for the output. Okay, so what I want to do here is first off, um, in my code, I need to first add the target locations. Okay, so I added the target location stores from my list on here. Okay, under the data tab. So I added target locations, and if we preview the data, we can see that we have an address and we have a city and we have postal code. All right, so those are the three things that I'm going to use for this project. Okay, all right, so let's go to the code. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create our list. So when I create my list, I'm not only going to grab the columns of the data, but I'm going to create some empty list for me to filter the data. So let's do that. So I'm going to create an address list. And in that, I'm going to get the column from the target table, which I've added to my project. And I'm going to get the address on here. Okay. Same thing. We're going to do this for city. Oh, try that again. So we're going to use the table and we're going to grab city. And I'm also going to grab the postal code. I'm going to call that zip code. But when we grab it from the list, it's named postal code under the list. So let's grab that. All right, so you've just uh, fulfilled one requirement. You have to use a list. So we're bringing in some lists here. So we're going to use lists. Let's put some empty lists for filters. So let's filter address. And that's going to be an empty list. So we just use opening and closing bracket. Let's filter city. So filter city. And then let's filter zip code. So filter zip, opening and closing bracket. All right, so we've created our list. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I have to get the information from the text box and I want to call a function that's going to filter. All right, so this is where we're going to use a function with a parameter. So I'm going to use an onEvent that's going to start this process, and I'm going to go text input 1. When that's changed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a local variable called state name. And you know what? I forgot to get the state list. That's going to get us all started. So we also have to add that. Can't do the project without the state name. All right, so let's put that in real quick. So we're going to grab the state. There we go. Okay, now we can use that list. So we're going to get the text from that box, from the text input one box. All right. Now I'm going to call a function. This function is going to do my filtering. All right, so let's create the function first. So we're going to create my function. So my function is going to have a parameter, and I'm going to call this um, get info function. And I'm going to let's use x as, that's going to be the variable I use within my function when I pass the state name to it as a parameter. Okay? So how are we going to filter this? Well, I'll put the call statement in right now too. So let's put the call statement in. The call statement is going to be get info, and we're going to send it the state name from that input box. All right, so we're all set up to write our function here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a loop. So there's your iteration requirement. And I'm going to go from 0, the beginning of the list, to the end of the state list. So state.length minus 1. Now we'll have our selection, because I'm going to use the if statement. So if state, actually if state bracket I is equal to x. Now remember, we pass state name into x into our function. If this is true, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the city, I'm going to grab the address, and I'm going to grab the zip code, and I'm going to append them into the filtered list. Okay, so we're going to say filter address, and we're going to grab address I. Because remember, if we're on the same line of the state, then that address will be in the same location. Okay. Oh, I forgot my end bracket. Let's try that again. Address I. Okay. Again, looking back at the data, let me show you what we mean here. So if the state name is Alabama and we're in 0 of the list, it's going to grab the address from there using my filter. It's also going to grab the city and the postal code. All right. All right, so let's go back. Okay, so we had filter address. Now we do need to do the same thing for filter city. We're going to grab the city from its list, city I, and then we're going to append item. We're going to grab filter zip code. Let's see if I named it zip code. No, I just named it zip. So filtered zip, and we're going to grab zip code I. Okay. All right, so we created our function. We called the function getInfo. And then when this is done, what we want to do is we want to be able to update the screen. Okay, so let's update the screen and let's fill in text area 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a string when we update the screen. That's going to be the city or the address city on a different line. So when we update our screen, so let's create the update screen function. So we've got update screen. And we're not going to use a parameter for this because these are global variables. So we don't need a parameter. Okay. And again, we're going to go through a loop. We're going to loop through. So we need control. Let's change this to J. And now we can use the length of, all these lengths are going to be the same. So let's just use filter city dot length -1. Again, you could use filter address length -1 or filtered zip. They're all the same length because we're grabbing them from the same row. So we're going to have the same amount. So now what we want to do is we want to create a local variable. Okay, now I should put that variable on the outside of the for loop. So I'm going to call this output. And I'm going to make it an empty string, opening and closing quotes. And then what I want to do is up I want to update the output variable by first off, to include the previous line, we have to put output equals output plus, and then we're going to do filter address J plus, and I'm going to put to the screen a comma with a space in quotes plus filter city J plus. Now, if we don't put this character in, it's going to put them all on the same line horizontally, so it's going to keep going across. So we want to put the end of line character in. So that is the \n with an end quote to the end of our line here. All right. And then once our for loop is done, we've built our output string. So before we exit out of the loop, we need to set the text. We need to set the text of, this is text area 1, and we need this to be output. All right, so let's test it. Okay, so we run this. We type in Michigan, and we get nothing. Okay. So what happened with this? Let's see. Did we ever call update screen? We never called update screen. All right, so after we've got our info, before we exit out of this loop, yep, you can't execute the function if you don't call it. So we have to make sure that we call update screen. Now let's try it again. We run it. We type in Michigan, and we get a list of all the locations of the Target stores in Michigan. All right. Okay, so now if we go back to our original design, let's test it for Ohio. Make sure. So we go Ohio, and there, boom, we got all the targets in Ohio. So if we go back to my original design, I had a grayed out checkbox, checkbox 1 with label 3. So what I wanted to do is when I run this, I don't want this visible until this shows. And then I'm going to give them the option of checking on that box so that they can see something more local to their zip. So let's go back to the update screen. So after I print out my text area, let's show the ability for them. Okay, so let's see. Let's show element. I'll hit reset. Let's show element, and we have our checkbox. And then what's the name of this label? Label 3. So let's also show element label 3. Okay. So now when I run it, nothing here. But now if I type in Ohio, I get the addresses in the city, but now I have the ability to filter it by the zip code. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to make now right now you have enough that fulfilled all the requirements. So we wouldn't even have to do the zip code here. So if you look at this, if I go back, I have, I have lists, I have um, a function that filters address, address, city, zip code, um, takes in one parameter. Okay, so we have functions with parameters. Um, we have looping, so we have iteration. We have selection, so we have selection on here. So, this is a good, simple project that you can do that, and then you can apply it to many of the different data sets on here, this technique. And again, this is all stuff that we learned during the year. All right, so now what we need to do is if the checkbox is checked, that means we want to go on to screen two. So we're going to put in on event, and we're going to say the checkbox, if checkbox one is click, let's do click, then we want to set screen, we want screen two, okay? All right, so let's run this, test it out. So we type in Ohio, we get the name of the cities and the address. We click that on and now we're on screen two, so that works. All right, so now we're just going to apply the same concepts that we did. We have a text. The zip now is on screen two. Its name is text input two. So again, we have to get an on event. And we want to say um, text input two. And if we change, what we want to do is create a local variable again. And then this is going to be zip code. Let's do, so we don't get the same, we already have a variable named zip code. Let's call it enter zip code. And then we're going to get the number. And we're going to get it from text box, text input 2. And then again, we're going to call a function. I'm going to call this function, let's just call this local, get local. And we're going to send it enter zip code. Okay. All right, now again, we write our function, same techniques we did before. This is called get local. Let's use the letter Y as our temporary variable inside the function that takes in enter zip code. Again, we're going to use a for loop. All right, let's use letter K this time. All right, and now what we want to do is we want to go to the filtered zip list now. All right, so we're going to do the list is filtered zip. So we want to go to the end of filter zip dot length -1. And what we want is we want to update the screen. Okay. So what we already have it by state, so now we're filtering it again So we have the filtered zips by state. So we can go right to creating our output variable for this. So let's do that. So let's go right to creating, instead of creating another list for that, let's go output 2, output 2, and let's again create an empty string here. And then let's say if we're going to, well, we need to put in our if statement. So if filter zip k is equal to the zip code that we have, then we're going to write it to output 2. Okay, so we're going to say output 2 output 2 is equal to, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put in the address of that. So we're going to say, um, just like we did before, filter address J, or actually this case K, comma, or actually plus, quotes, comma, space, plus, and then we'll put in the city. So we have filter city, and then we'll put in the K, and then plus filter zip. So let's put 2 spaces and then plus filter zip. Did we call it filter zip? Yeah. Okay, and let's put the end of line character. So backslash quotes, whoops, quotes backslash n. All right. And I saw one thing I forgot. We need to put output 2 plus so that it includes the previous line. We keep adding to it instead of rewriting over it. All right, so when that's done, text area 2 needs to be updated. So we're going to say set text, and when the loop's done, we're going to say text area 2, and we're going to type in output 2. All right, and let's hope this works. Get local Y, we called it. All right, so let's run this. We type in Michigan. We have that. Okay, we have the Michigan locations. Uh, we filter by zip. Um, let's try 48088. Nothing. 48336. Okay, we get that location and we get the rest of the list. So why did we get the rest of, oh, I forgot to put the K at the end. Okay, so let's go back to here. Put in our K. All right. We run it again. Type in Michigan. And then we click on this. 48336 is Farmington Hills. That works. 48374, I believe, is Novi. Yep, that's Novi. So that works. All right. So we have it working. So we have a program that you can use that meets all of your requirements for your AP Computer Science Principles Create task. We use lists. We used functions and parameters. We used looping. We used if statements, so conditionals, updated the screen. So this is something simple, but again, you can apply this to any of the data sets on here. Okay, anything that you can, like we have um, a ton of different things that we can use on here, but these are some of the techniques that we learned during the year. All right, so I hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.